and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to Carrie's Touch Presents Celebrating Carrie, Her Story and Intimate Partner Violence. I am Reverend Dr. Tawana Davis. I am honored to be a part of Carrie's Touch as the mobilizer. I am honored to be a friend of the organization and a recipient of the organization as a breast cancer survivor. But today, we are focusing on domestic violence or intimate partner violence. Domestic violence can occur between a parent and child, siblings, or even roommates. Intimate partner violence, on the other hand, can occur between romantic partners who may or may not be living together in the same household. Intimate partner violence may also be referred to intimate partner domestic violence. So I thought it was important to clear that up. But the bottom line is we need to end the violence through ending our silence. For, for statistics, they're sobering. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men experience domestic or intimate partner violence. They're riddled with guilt and shame and fear, while silence lends power to the abuse and the vulnerable, the dangerous, life threatening attributes of domestic violence. Inserting varying voices like today by those who are impacted by domestic violence to liberate, to heal, to build community so that we might live and thrive and honor and treat each one with dignity, because no one deserves to be a victim of domestic violence. So today carries touch as we speak to our mission to save the lives of Black women and inserting humanity in the journey of breast cancer. We are doing the same for domestic violence. At this time, I would like to introduce our co founder, our president, our visionary, Reverend Dr. Tammie Denyse, who is here today to share her story, but most poignantly, her mother's story. And what an honor to insert her mother's story into this narrative, honoring the ancestors, honoring those that have gone before us, honoring women who unfortunately succumb to very heinous acts of domestic violence. We are here to say, we see you, we believe you, we honor you, and we want to support you on this journey. So I welcome my friend, my ride or die, my support, my sister, the Reverend Dr. Tammie Denyse.
Whoa.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Tawana. I'm already actually in tears, and a few minutes ago, I was like, get it together, girl, get it together. And I just want to start by saying that, Black women don't get permission to have tears and to feel pain and to feel sadness. And I'm feeling all of those things in addition to joy. Um, to be able to talk to those who are on with us today about my experience of intimate partner violence from my mom, Carrie. So I won't apologize for my tears. I won't apologize for what you can hear in my voice. And I won't apologize if I need to just take a second to collect myself. And you might be asking, well, why are you doing this? I'm doing this because it's necessary. I'm doing this because there are people who have the experience of domestic violence from my lens that don't know what to do with it. Yolanda Adams wrote a song called What About the Children? And that song, when I was in my late 20s, ministered to me on a level that I didn't even know I needed ministering to. I remember, I remember sitting at on my grandparents' couch, belting out the songs, the words of the song "Greatest Love of All." That when I heard the song, it was then by George Benson, but Whitney Houston went on to make the song famous, as Whitney Houston did with so many other songs. And as I began to tell Carrie's story, I want to begin there. The words are, I wish we could play the song, but we don't want to get shut down and we don't want the video taken down. So, and I sure as heck can't sing it. So, we'll do the words. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. Everybody's searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to. I never found anyone to fulfill my needs, a lonely place to be. And so I learned to depend on me. I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. If I fail, if I succeed, at least I'll live as I believe, no matter what they take from me. They can't take away my dignity because the greatest love of all is happening inside of me. I found the greatest love of all inside of me. That's the first verse. And sitting on that sofa, I would belt that song out like I was, popular singers today are, Beyonce and some of the others, um, because I needed those words as an 11-year-old child trying to navigate the trauma that I had experienced up to that point. It didn't make a lot of sense. There was a time when, it wasn't the thing to do. Um, when for therapy, and I'm pausing because I want to say this trigger warning. Trigger warning. This is going to get a little bit in depth, in detail, and so I want to pause and say, to my siblings, um, Anthony, Donna, and we call him Stanky, but he's a full grown man and his name is Charles. To my grandparents that took in 4 little kids. I was the oldest at 11, the youngest was 5. To my aunties who had no idea how to navigate losing their sister. To my cousins and to all the people that have journeyed with me for the past 46 years through this horrific space. I was 29 years old before I ever shed one tear after the incident with my mom. And y'all, I have written out 10 iterations of how I was going to do this talk, and I just got to do it the way it comes. So being that little girl sitting on my grandparents' sofa, trying to find hope, trying to find how to live, trying to find what next. After all of the years of my life, I remember every time my mom took me to visit my dad, my biological dad, her husband would beat her. If she didn't say the right things the right way, he'd beat her. If she didn't cook the food the right way, he'd beat her. And my siblings and I witnessed all of that. And so as I tell her story, I can only tell it through my lens because I was, I was a kid, and you don't talk to kids about these things. For many, many years before I got into therapy, I would wonder, I was angry with my mom. And I would wonder, why on earth would she stay in a situation that was so horrific for her? And then as I got into therapy and as I learned more about domestic violence, I recognized that um, women stay for many reasons, and no woman should be judged or demeaned or ridiculed for the reason that she chooses to stay. And I believe that my mom stayed because she wanted my siblings and I to have a better life. You know, in society, we put so much pressure on people to live a certain way, right? It's you. The perfect family, the intact family, you know, looks like this. You do it this way. You for women, you graduate high school, you go to college to find a husband, and then you have kids and the picket fence, and that is just not reality for most of us. And I believe my mom was chasing that dream. She was chasing that picket fence life because she had me out of wedlock. And, you know, the stigma and the shame and the embarrassment that it brought to my family, um, she just wanted to do it the right way. And so while I can't definitively say why she stayed, those are the reasons that I believe that she stayed. Because my mom was an amazing woman. She was beautiful. She wore statement necklaces. I tried so hard, y'all, to wear purple today, and purple just would not be my friend. My purple didn't arrive. I ordered some more purple. Jeff Bezos, I shouldn't say his name on this, but he could, you know, he guaranteed me he was going to be here Thursday, then it was Friday, and now it's not even here. But nonetheless, my mom wore statement pieces. And so if you see me and you see me in bold necklaces and bold jewelry, I get it. I get it from my mama. My mama was good to us. And the day that everything transpired, and that's really why I want to talk today, because what happened with my mom possibly could happen with so many other people. My mom there was a plan. There was a plan in place, and we lived in a two-story house. We had the intercom system, and my mom called me on the phone. My mom, you know, we thought my mom had gone to work. We were getting ready to for school. Her husband was still in the home with us, and I should call him her abuser. That's exactly what he was, actually. Her abuser was at the house with us, and I didn't know that he had rigged the intercom system. And so my mom called me to say, hey, you're going to go to school. And when you get to school, don't go to class, go to the principal's office. Your grandfather is going to be there waiting for you to pick you up. And you're going to go, you know, to your grandparents' house. You know, your siblings are, everybody's going to go. You get them rounded up. You know how it is when you're the oldest kid, right? You're the one responsible for doing the thing. So get the kids, round them up, and um, get them when you get to, you know, granddaddy's house. Get them a snack and all of the things. She's giving me all the instructions. I'm 11. It's a lot. It's a change. It's in the morning of school. And so then she goes, okay, Tammie Denyse, repeat to me what I said to you. So I repeated it. The intercom system was on, and he heard everything that I said. And so he intercepted the plan, and then things transpired from there. And that day, he took her life. He believed she was finally going to exit the relationship. And his last words to her was, if I can't have you, no one can. And he took her life in that very moment. And I share that because there's so many resources available now for people to be able to get out of those situations with professional help and support. And I know it might feel lonely. I know it might feel like no one else understands, but there are people in the chat that are waiting. If there's something, we know how sensitive this subject is, and if there's something that's triggering you or you need some support, don't put it in the chat. Don't put it in the chat. Don't put it in the chat. Send us a private message. And we've got people waiting just to be able to support you. Um, and so, in the song, What About the Children? And in the song, The Greatest Love of All, those were words that I needed to define myself, because the victim, my mom, was now gone. And people don't think about the children being part of that victim line. I consider myself a product of domestic violence because I'm part of my mom's lineage, and having to grow up and having elderly grandparents and having a family that just didn't know what to do. There are so many of us children that have tried to navigate this space when their moms, or in some cases their dads, were taken away from them by a domestic or an intimate partner. And so, um, I had to define who I am and who I was to be at 11 years old. I didn't even know it. When I reviewed this and reviewed the song, and some of the words that are talking about, I had to do those things. But for me, it was a future casting. I have to do those things. If I am going to survive, if I am going to effectively navigate life, I have to find my center, my grounding, my place in love. A lot of people say, how are you not angry? How are you not, just mean? And how are you so, loving and so giving? And I guess God dropped that nugget inside of me, a long time ago. And I understand that it can be really hard to be angry with God because you pray for things, and sometimes God says no, and you don't understand the no. So I get it, and I'm not going to try to fix it on this. And during this talk, I'm going to say that there are professionals on the line that are available to help you navigate some, if not all of it. Um, I just feel like I want to pause. I do have, I did light my Carrie candle. She's here with us. I didn't do any of the stuff I wrote down, but Dr. Tad, I'm gonna turn it back over to you for now, and I'm here, but yeah, I'm turning it back over.
Yeah, let us, show some love on Facebook, or make a comment on YouTube Live. Just sending some love, some loving energy to who we affectionately know as T. Denise. So no disrespect, but T. Denise has just poured out her heart, and this is not her first time telling this story, but as she said to me on this platform, this is one of the first times, right? Am I correct telling this
First
story?
time publicly, I've, like on, once you get on the internet, that's a whole new world. So, I've done it like in intimate settings with women and such, but on this type of platform, it's yeah, this is the first.
Okay. Well, we honor you, and we just want to send you some love and light before we delve into a dialogue. So, I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I'm always trying to find different words. Tam knows that I just language is my thing, trying to find language that is inclusive and life giving, and victim just doesn't do. I haven't found that word yet, but if you know of a word, put it in the chat and I'll give you credit the first time. But I want to use words that are life giving. But for today, um, we don't have it, so we're going to use victim, but not as a shame, a mode of shame or degradation or dehumanization. It is just identifying what you have gone through and how someone else has the power and control So I want to turn to Tam and ask this question about power and control. Being 11 years old, and telling this story from you have to go back into
Oh, yeah.
that 11-year-old. What did that power and control look like that unfortunately led up to our dear, Carrie being taken from us?
You mean in the home as a child?
Yeah, as a child.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of those things where when the abuser is angry, the household is angry. And
Mm-hmm.
so we walked around on eggshells. And I remember one time, I had gotten my siblings together and I was like, he is not going to hit her anymore. If he hits her again, we are going to jump in and we're going to save her. And so, like I said, my youngest brother was 5. I don't even know if he remembers this. But it was one of those days. He was triggered and he came in that house and he hit her. And when I tell you, we jumped on him like rats. We were all over we were beating him. And for me that was a way of us trying to take back our own power and control that he took away every single time. But the power and control belonged to him. Everything was around catering to him and his needs. That we couldn't talk too loud, we couldn't laugh too loud, we um, just um, just catering to him and his needs. And I guess I've always been that kid that always asks the question why. And sometimes I got in trouble a lot because don't eat the cookie for dinner. It wasn't an obstinate or a cantankerous but why. It was, I really wanted to know, well, what's the logic in not eating the cookie? I was just that kid. And so I would ask myself, why is this happening? And why does he get to be the one in control? And why does he get to have the power? So I've always been a fighter. They say when you're triggered, things happen to you, you have two responses, fight or flight. I've always been that fighter, and I always fought him back. I didn't fight my mom because she's mom. We trust mom. And but I did tell her one time, once I realized every time she would take me to see my biological father, that he would beat her. And I told her, I said, we don't have to do this. I don't have to go see him. He's not. If this is the outcome, I don't want to go see him. Um, but she was such a beautiful person. She said, "No, you need to know your father. You need to know, who you are." And even though she raised my siblings and I to be sisters and brothers, we don't do all of that step and half and none of that. Those are my sisters. That's my sister and my brothers. Period. No question about it. Um, but power and control was always in his hands, and I always fought to try to get it back. Hence us jumping on him. And I mean, the sad and not funny side of it is that I paid for it because then he started to beat me and do horrific things to me. Not none sexual, but physical. He would beat me. And the day that he murdered her, somehow I ended back up at the house. Somehow we, the children, ended up back at the house with him. And he had no. This was before. It was before. He had sat me in a chair and he took an extension cord and he tied me to the chair and he took you remember those Hot Wheels racetracks?
Yeah.
He hit me with those Hot Wheels racetracks. Yeah, and who knows what it was that day. It could have been the sun was shining too brightly, and he would say it was my fault. If my siblings were learning to ride their bikes and they fell off of their bikes, he beat me because he said I shouldn't have let them fall. One of my siblings had a bedwetting issue, and I was blamed for them wetting to bed. It was bananas. It was total, total, total bananas.
When you mentioned earlier not shedding a tear,
Mhm.
can you describe what it was like holding on to that tears are a form of release,
Mm.
acknowledgement. And what was it like growing up? Where did you hold that that energy and or that sadness or that anger?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
all
know,
those things.
interestingly, God made us phenomenally. And sometimes, even in God's no, when the situation is too much for us, God will blank us out and we don't remember. And so I had no emotional attachment to it. It was like it happened. I saw it. I saw my grandparents take him out of the house, after he shot her. Um, and then there was some kind of thing that happened. And I remember, when the ambulance came and they were taking her out of the house, and I just stood there on the porch and I just watched it. And it was almost like I was watching a movie. And so for those 18 years that I didn't shed a tear, I would be able to talk about this story without one tear, without an ounce of emotion. I'd be talking about it like we were saying, "Hey, girl, what are we wearing to Wakanda too?" Just completely void of any connection to any emotions tied to it. So I created my own world and my own fantasy, and life was hard. Our grandparents were elderly; they died. My grandmother died 4 years after that. So, my grandmother was the one who sat down. We would sit up late night, eat buttermilk and cornbread out of a glass. I mean, when I think about it now, I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine eating that, in this season of my life. But hey, it was comfort food back then. And, she and my mom both called me by my first and middle name, Tammie Denyse. Um, well, then middle name. It's now my legal last name. But she would I it I in my family, many of our my relatives are lighter skinned than me, and so um she would tell me that I was beautiful. She would remind me that I was loved, and she would say all of the loving and nurturing things to me, and she would just pour these little nuggets in. I don't know, at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever time the Johnny Carson show came on. I'm up because, so I have always lived by, the refrain in that song that says, and if by chance that special place that you've been dreaming of leads you to a lonely place, find your strength in love. And that is just something that God dropped in my spirit in that song, The Greatest Love of All, um, at 11. And so I didn't access those tears until I was 29. And then when I was 29, I didn't even know how to cry. My therapist, I, she taught me how to cry. I Tears would not come out. And she taught me how to cry. And we started with an egg timer, and we scheduled when I was going to try to connect emotions to, the situation, and allow that release, those tears. And then she'd be on standby, in case I couldn't stop the crying. She goes, set the egg timer for I think it was 10 minutes. And if you can't stop crying after 10 minutes, call me, and blah, blah, blah. And we had this whole plan, but I had to learn how to cry. I had to learn to do what I did at the beginning of this conversation, right? I had to learn all of that. So by the time I learned it, I had already spent 18 years just trying to navigate life, finding love, defining love, um, giving and receiving love. So that's my journey and my story.
Wow, wow. So I now I'm speechless because just at 11, having to experience this and then journey until now, the resilience, um and I definitely don't use that word with, because you do amazing work with the strong black woman schema or the trope. That is not what we're talking about here today.
Hmm.
We're talking about this God-given covering and these teachings on how to love yourself and how to work your way through this. So, in working your way through this and building such an amazing organization called Carrie's Touch, which focuses on breast cancer, what inspired you? Because as you mentioned, many people assume, well, you mentioned privately but me, but many people assume that Carrie had breast cancer. So
Right.
what was that connection for you and the inspiration?
Yeah. So again, I've always been a fighter. So I honestly thought my work would be centered in domestic violence. I at 11 years old, 12, 13, 14 years old, and helping my grandparents with my siblings and such, I was like, I am going to create an organization to help women, you know, this was way before weave, or at least I knew about a weave. I'm going to help women escape, getting beaten. I mean, that's my 11-year-old, 12-year-old mind processing. But I've always known that I would do philanthropic work to help women and Black women specifically. So the model that we use today for Carrie's Touch was originally intended to be a domestic violence organization. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, God told me to pivot. And that whole plan for domestic violence was to be used for implementation around breast cancer. And when we were thinking of the name of the organization, we had a lot of other names. And then, God said, actually, my late co-founder and sister, Lynn Marie Rankin Cochran, she was the one. She said, "Well, we need Carrie on this journey with us. So let's think of something that has Carrie in it." And so it's an opportunity when people ask me who's Carrie, I get to tell them that she was my incredible mom, whose life was taken at the hands of her abuser. And I say, if you're in a relationship, um, and the love hurts, get some help, evaluate the relationship, because that's not to minimize the difficulty relationships, that it takes to navigate a relationship. Relationships are hard, they require a lot of work. There are going to be days and moments in the relationship where you're going to be sad and so on and so forth. But hurt, as in physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, you'd be amazed, Dr. Tad, at how many preachers' wives that I talk to that have suffered and are suffering from domestic violence, all to hold up this facade of who this man of God is. And I put that in quotes, air quotes. Um, so so I get to talk about domestic violence and my mom's story, um, as a part of the work with Carrie's Touch. And then I want to pivot and thank you for the work that you do in this space and for your expertise in this space, because I'm not sure that I ever would have done this without someone of your caliber, with your expertise, with your love, with your passion, with your compassion, and knowing how to hold a person who holds so many others, in this space. So I want to just extend a personal thank you to you, and send love for what you are helping us create in Carrie's Touch, and raising the awareness and starting to open this discussion around domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So thank you.
It is truly my pleasure, because not everyone can tell their story, right? It's too risky, it's dangerous. We can go through a litany of stories of how women have escaped not only their homes, but leaving their extended family, moving to a different state, moving to a different country,
Yeah.
going into a show, a whole litany of things. And I'm grateful that we have an opportunity to lend voice, because silence will not end the violence.
Mm-mm.
It's speaking up and speaking out that will end the violence, because once you uncover it, the guilt and shame begins to diminish, and so does the power and control.
Yeah.
And once we hold the abuser and perpetrator accountable for the abuse, that will also, reduce numbers. Like with Carrie's Touch, fighting so hard to reduce that 41% mortality rate of Black women with breast cancer as compared to white women. It's kind of parallel. Like you said, this is not, two siloed instances. They have plenty similarities. The numbers are disparaging for Black women. We are dying at
Mhm.
rates that are disproportionate, and we are dying, in disproportionate rates. But those of our BIPOC beloveds who don't have access, like our First Nation Indigenous folk who don't have access, those with English as their second language don't have access. So we have this language abuse. Or Representative Cori Bush was being interviewed, and she even named political abuse. So
Mm.
all of this abuse with women, from the time we set our feet on these shores by force, women have been demeaned and degraded. And there is something about voice and lending voice and encouragement and empowerment. And I want to name this as we continue this dialogue about the language then and what we have now,
Yeah.
because sometimes safety plans aren't perfect.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes, you know, following, speaking back or speaking out does not work to our advantage. And it harms us in ways that are, um, sometimes leads to our demise.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, our perpetrators and abusers are manipulators. And like you said, rigging the intercom system, who would have known? Who
Yeah.
would have
And,
known?
and my, my mom said, make sure the intercom is not on. And so, when the intercom's on, well, back then it was a red light. Now I think it's a green light. None of that matters. But the light that is supposed to be on, she said, make sure it's not on. And so the light wasn't on. So who'd have thought, that's 1976. That's when phones were attached to the wall. So it wasn't taking the phone and going to a quiet, it wasn't any of those things. So yeah, you're right that, sometimes the plans aren't perfect, and but that's life, right? Life is this beautifully complex, perfectly imperfect experience that we all are in. And for some, the journey is more challenging than it is for others. And I don't know why. I don't know why. At 11 years old, I witnessed my mom's murder. I don't know. I don't know why my 5-year old brother had to grow up without his mom. I don't know.
Who You may have said this, but I remember you saying your grandmother died about 4 or 5 years
Hmm.
after.
Yeah.
So who raised you and your siblings?
The streets. Um,
Oh, let's
you
talk.
know, my grandfather. I had to do a lot of work with my grandfather because my grandfather blamed me for his losing his daughter, because you know what to do with the grief, what to do with the anger. There was no therapy, there was nobody to talk to. It was go to church, and church people will say, God's not going to give you anything more than you can bear. Well, let me tell you, losing a child is certainly more than a human can bear. Let me just say that. And so my grandfather, he took a lot out on me. And so because I refused to be in an abusive situation, my grandfather never hit me, but he did some things that I don't know that I'm ready to talk about all of that today, but he did some things that left me in a very vulnerable place. Shout out to my baby sister, because she was always there for me, and she has always been there for me. Like, I couldn't eat in our own home, and so my sister would make sure I had food. And so I was like, I'm out of here. I'm leaving um, this environment. And I sought out, my biological father, and that didn't go well at all. It's not easy to bring a teenager into, your pretty little family nucleus, and the wife, and just all of those things. And so um, the streets raised us. I lived in and out of different friends' homes. Um, I will leave my siblings' story to them to tell, but in general, it was the streets, it was the neighbor, it was, the friend, it was, in some cases, the cousin. And we had to navigate life on our own. Like, one of my siblings, had their first apartment in high school because there was no place to go. So, and so, when we think about it, it's like, who rents an apartment to a high schooler? But that's how that sibling, navigated the space. So, literally the streets.
If you had to name your divine transformation, I mean, people make assumptions, you can't judge a book by its cover. You just never know anyone's story.
Mhm.
If you had to name, whether it's one thing or a few things that really built up this this divinely brilliant
Mhm.
Black woman that
Mhm.
sits before us today, take us just through that journey. What nuggets did you just gather up and you made built bricks with straw?
Right, right.
Give someone some encouragement, because this is whew, what a story. But look at you.
Mm.
I
I first have to say, look at me, but look at God. Look at the amazing people that God put in my life. I've never had a season where I didn't have a mother figure that loved me up as if I was her own. And in this season of my life, and probably for the past, what does it say? I'm 19 years in ministry. So my mother in ministry, Reverend Carolyn Habersham, in this season has just been that gift. And I could go, Marcella Kendrick, I could go Claudine Arnold. I could just think back to all of these places where this divine mother figure loved up on me, and then I would do my best as a child, as a teenager, as a 20-year-old, and so on and so forth, to try to pour that back into my siblings and give that back to them. But I was raised like many Black folks, and I was raised in the church. And so I knew God at an early age, and I had that happened when I was 11, and when I was 12, I gave my life to Christ. And then I did a whole lot of things to try to just survive. Not the trauma of witnessing my mom's murder, but the trauma of raising yourself as a little girl on the streets. So trying to navigate that. So I dabbled in different types of drugs. I did, trying to find love and sex. I did the things to try to chase this love that, that was instilled in me from this beautiful song. And I was looking for it externally. And then I remembered, well, actually, this love comes from inside of me. And there was one day I was in college, and I had a wild night of partying. And I got back to my dorm room safely by the grace of God. And I just said, I don't want to live like this. If I don't want to do this the rest of my life. And so Romans 7, oh no, okay, there it is. Romans 7, um, 15 says, I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But I do what I hate. And what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. And so in my 28, 18, 19, 20-year old self life, I didn't know anything about exegeting a text. I didn't know anything about all of the stuff that we learn and we get fancy, on our way to ordination and receiving those degrees and things. But all I knew is that how I was living wasn't how I wanted to live. And I wanted to live the way that I wanted to live. And I wanted to do the things that I wanted to do. So that scripture itself, just face value, the words had enough power and enough guidance on their own to just help me shift and change my life. And I wanted to be a different person. I've always been likable, but I abused that privilege. And, I was a manipulator. I grew up on the streets. I was a hustler. I went to high school 20 cents short every single day to just get there and back. I had $1 a day to get to high school. Well, it was 60 cents to ride the bus one way. That doesn't include lunch, and lunch I couldn't bring from home. So I was a hustler. I was always trying to find out how I was going to navigate life. And I was tired and I was sick of it. And I didn't want to live that way. I didn't want to deceive people. I wanted to just be transparent and be who I am. And it was that one scripture that helped me to start changing who I wanted to be, and not advanced, not educated, in my simplest, purest, rawest form. I just said, God, help me to be who I want to be. Help me to be who you designed me to be, not understanding what I was saying. I understand it now, but then no, I just didn't want to be in that pain. I just didn't want to live that life anymore. So that began my journey and elevated my relationship with God, to where I wanted to live like, the God I serve. The God I serve is not some stuffy, God that you can't access. The God I serve is gritty, gets down in the stuff with you, wrestles with you with your stuff, loves you up in your stuff, holds on to you in your stuff, where you don't have to be this perfect being walking this straight and narrow line. I met a God that was bigger than all of that. And so that is what fuels, who I am. That is what fuels the love I talk about in that song, The Greatest Love of All. Because, God is love.
Hmm. Wow, thank you. As our time is winding down, I am going to ask you one last question.
Okay.
But before I do want to posit just some overall information. And moving forward, Carrie's Touch will offer access to different organizations, because one of the important things in this journey of surviving domestic violence or intimate partner violence is knowing that you don't have to do this alone. And you now, I mean, things have definitely evolved
Thank
since Tammie was 11.
you.
Things have definitely evolved, and we just have access. Sometimes the internet gives us too much information, but we have factual information that'll help you, and to humanize your experience, and to create a space to save more Black women from domestic violence or intimate partner violence. But some of the things, some action items that I'll leave you with before I ask T. Denyse this last question, is always becoming a safe space for someone who is enduring and dealing with domestic violence or intimate partner violence, like saying things like, I see you, I support you, I believe you, instead of, that could never be me. I would never let a man put you, what is wrong with you? What did you do to make him mad? So, and we're using binary terms because that's just our experience. But this happens in same gender loving communities. This happens in BIPOC communities. This happens in white communities. This, so we're just speaking from our experience, but it can translate into your experience, and you can insert your experience into the narrative. Be educated. There are resources out there that talk about never tell a victim to leave because you just might be causing their demise. You know, never tell them to leave without a safety plan. Um, Speak out. And that's what we're doing. That was one of our goals, to put voice to this and to speak out, because people, when I talk about it, people didn't know that there is actually spiritual abuse or financial abuse or even sexual abuse. You
Hmm.
can be sexually abused in a committed relationship.
Yep.
Respond accordingly with something life giving and positive. And if you don't know, you don't know.
Mm.
Don't start making up stuff.
Right.
Go to a resource that is it has an expertise in helping and supporting domestic violence victims. So and support policy issues. So Carrie's touches into policy. Policy is so important because it puts on the books things that we must do, whether it's voting rights, whether it is reproductive rights and rights to our own body, to punishing or holding the abuser accountable and sending them to jail. And I know that's a whole nother story with a lot of black and brown brothers in jail. There's just a litany of things that are challenging for us as people of color, and it does not excuse or give us permission to allow someone to continue abusing an intimate partner. So I just wanted to posit those things before Tammie blesses us with some final words. So my last question for you, sis, is there anything that you want to leave with the listeners? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I am grateful. I am truly grateful that even though Carrie isn't with us, even though mom isn't with us, her four legacies are still here. All four of her children are here. We are all alive. Anthony Fletcher, Donna Gilbert, Charles Gilbert. We are all alive and we are all thriving. And so, with the proper resources, with, you know, for me, it was my faith, because that's all I had. There was no one. I talk to my friends and they go, "Remember when we were kids, we watched this or we did this?" And I go, "No, that wasn't my experience. I was literally trying to survive, but I did. I'm still here. My siblings are still here. And all of us are filled with joy and with love and with happiness. So if I can leave any of us anything, it really would be that for those who are in a situation like mine, um, there is hope. And I was listening to a sermon. I actually just listened to it this morning. It was Reverend Dr. Donna Allen. She talked about being a hope dealer, and that was what I needed to be able to even get on this call today. Was to say that if nothing else, look at me not as somebody of perfection, but somebody who was flawed. You heard me tell some of my stories. It was muddy. It was difficult, yet God and yet God's people, because of them, I am. And I am here today to encourage you that, Dr. Tad, we're not talking about her story today. She's going to give you some information to come back and we will talk about her story. So, for those who are, like she said, we don't have another word for it yet, but those who are victims, those who are suffering, um, she got out. And there are many people that are on this Zoom or on this in the room who got out, who survived. So it is possible with the right help, the right support. It is possible to be able to get out and to heal and to be able to move forward and to have a robust and abundant life. Does that mean perfect? Not at all. But it means that you can find joy and definitely find love.
Well, I am absolutely speechless and grateful and just honoring you and your story. Uh, Tam, you are just you exemplify what it is to honor the God in you and to move forward in such a divine, powerful, unapologetic Black woman, truth telling, and all of that is in your DNA, which is why we are honoring and we are speaking Carrie's name because she left you a legacy to move forward and to do this amazing work. This amazing work will continue. We'll do this once a month. Next month, it'll be on the second Saturday of each month, and you'll see some more information. And I'll have an opportunity to share my story. And I'm grateful for Carrie's touch for creating the sacred space for me to do so. Always keep the domestic violence hotline in the back of your mind. It's on the ticker on the bottom, 1-800-799-7233 or 799 SAFE. And at any time when you find that you are in danger, call 911. And I know that we have some things to deal with the police, but right now, if you are in danger, the first thing you should do is call 911. Secondly, if you have any questions, if you are a victim, if you are a survivor, if you are a friend or relative, you can call the domestic violence hotline and ask questions and help them. They'll help you navigate through whatever situation you are going through. And finally, we will have some Sacramento resources and prayerfully just pray for us, how we can get resources, national resources out to everyone. But Sacramento is one of the highest, if not the highest, area for domestic violence. They have the highest numbers of domestic violence. So it's no accident that Tammie's beautiful voice is speaking out against domestic violence. So anything else, my beloved sister?
You know, um, you know, thank you and gratitude. And I just want to leave the folks, and we'll get our amazing audio visual guru Josh to put the video and the song and the words on our face. I just have to give shout out to Josh, man. Josh holds us in ways that folks can never imagine. It's always the folks behind the scenes that make the magic happen. So I shout out to Josh and all of our team that's online that's helping to navigate. But I really just want to leave these words with you. If I fail, if I succeed, at least I'll live as I believe. No matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity because the greatest love of all is happening to me. I found the greatest love of all inside of me. The greatest love of all is easy to achieve. In learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. And if by chance that special place that you've been dreaming of leads you to a lonely place, find your strength and love. God is love.
Thank you, beloved. Thank you for joining us. Share this video and thank you. May you be blessed as we move forward, and we'll see you next time. God bless.
Thank you.